Learning Ablat Gemara. We are up to Daf Yudalid Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Mesachachin b'nesarim." You can go ahead and place schach with boards. You can use boards. Dibir Rabbi Yehuda. Now, what size the boards are? The boards, as Rabbi Yehuda says, you can use. We're going to find a machlekes in the Gemara between Rav and Shmuel, and then a machlekes in Shainim who the halach is like. And Rav Meir says you cannot use boards for your schach, and the reason why you cannot use boards for the schach, we'll see, is because he's scared that if you use boards, next time you're going to sit in the house, because people cannot see the difference. Then, what about nosen oleh neser shehu rochav abot tfachim? If you place on it a board that is 4 tfachim wide, shade is kosher. Now, what does that mean? We just said there's a problem. We're talking here about that you put it by the side wall. So we'll apply the rule of daifan akuma, where the wall becomes part of the schach, and therefore it is kosher. Ubevad shalayishan tachta, but provided you don't sleep under the board because it's now the wall, so you cannot sleep under there. Amar Rav, so we have a machlek Rav Shmuel. What exactly is a machlek? Is because you can have boards that are 4 tfachim wide, which are significant. Most of the boards used for a ceiling are 4 tfachim wide planks. You can have boards between 3 and 4, and then you can have boards which are less than 3 tfachim. So Amar Rav says, the whole machlek is been studying by boards, sheyesh behen arba, that are 4 tfachim wide. That's there's machlek is whether they can be used or not. Rameh hold East Lake Zaydas particular Rameh is worried that if you're going to sit there under the board, next time you'll sit under a house. You know, if people don't understand the difference between a board 4 tfachim wide, you have a whole sukkah, a whole schach covered with these boards that are 4 tfachim wide, and how is that different than the normal ceiling I have in my house? That's what you would think. And a house is definitely possible, either because it says sukkahs, so sukkahs are bayis, which is what Rashi learns, or others say a house, you built it to live there. So it's tasev v'lo min asi, like the Ritva and the Ran and others. For Rabbi Yehuda, the last week that is tikkun. Rabbi Yehuda is not worried that people are going to make that assumption because you can sit in these temporary planks, you can sit in the house. According to Rab, any board that's less than 4 tfachim wide, since homes didn't use that either, then what's the point of answering it? It comes from the ground, it's not makabel tum, it's a flat piece of wood. Why shouldn't you be able to use it as chach? That's what Rab says. So the only argument is if it's greater than 4. Shmuel says no, greater than 4, everybody agrees is no good, because it's like a house and people will make that mistake. The machlek is between 3 and 4. Shmuel says b'she'ein behen arba, machlek is when there's less than 4. Aval yesh behen arba, there's 4 tfachim, the divin hakop psula. Everyone agrees that more than 4 tfachim is possible because you'll mistake it for your house. There's the Gemara. If ein behen arba, they're not 4 tfachim wide, and it sounds from what you're saying, any size board is no good. I feel pachad mishleish if it's less than 3 tfachim. Or kani balman, just regular sticks, poles. That's what people use all the time, bamboo sticks or whatever it is. Amar Papa, you misunderstood Shmuel. Hachikam. This is what Shmuel says. Yesh behen arba. If there's more than greater than 4 tfachim, divrei hakol, everyone holds possible. Pachas mishleish if it's less than 3 tfachim, divrei hakol, everyone holds kshed, it's kosher. Because it's regular boards, first of all, make the mistake, and it's just normal bamboo sticks or whatever kind of sticks you're using. My timer, why is it good? All it is a board, so what's the big deal? What's the problem? So when is the machlekes? The machlekes is keep between 3 and 4. Mar Sover, keep the lesson of Shir Mokim, since it's not choshev enough, Mokim on Shabbos has to be minimum 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. Lo Gazadina, we're not going to make any place any exeter. So Mar Sover, keep the nafki limiter is loved. Since it's already greater than 3 tvachim, had it been nothing there at all, it would be a pasla sukkah, so it's no longer in the rules of lavud. Gazina, we are geyser. The Rishonim don't like Rashi Pshat. The reason why 4 tfachim were goyz and less than 4, not goyz, is because 4 tfachim is what you use for a house, and less than 4 you don't use for a house. Then why doesn't the mother just say that? What does that do with sheer makom? Just say that since people don't use it for a house, there's no reason to make a gzeda. So they have other pshat. Anyway, Tanan Hosa, we learned Tanan, so let's go look back to our Mishnah and see which way our Mishnah seems to lend itself to. Tanan Hosa, we learned the end of the Mishnah is you place a board to about 12 foot wide, shade is kosher. We shouldn't sleep underneath it. It's clearly here a 4 tfachim wide board is all right. Now the Gemara is going to think, who holds that a 4 tfachim wide board is all right? Remember, according to Shmuel, everybody agrees that the boards are greater than 4 tfachim, the sukkah is possible. So how can the Mishnah conclude that you have a board 4 tvachim wide? It's kosher. According to the Rab, it follows Rabbi Yehuda. Fine, who's lenient when it comes to 4 tvachim. According to Shmuel, everyone agrees that if it's greater than 4 tvachim, it's possible. Then what's going on here? It's Bishlem with the Shmuel. Sorry. So the other way around. As in more like this. Bishlem with Shmuel. According to Shmuel, the Amma Bish ain't ben abba machlek. The whole machlek is if it's less than 4 tvachim. Aval yesh ben abba that's greater than 4 tvachim. So it looks like the Gemara knew we're talking about Doif and Akum here. And therefore, according to everybody, the Sukkah is kosher where you have a 4 tvachim board. But the Mishnah says you shouldn't sleep underneath it, which is telling us that this board is not kosher. Now, the Mishnah seems to be saying it a din that's unanimous. You're telling me unanimous that a 4 tvachim board is not kosher. The Sukkah itself is kosher. Why? Because Doif and Akum, but don't sleep underneath that because the board itself is possible. Who's the one that says that everyone holds that the board itself is possible? If it's greater than 4 tvachim, at Shmuel, according to Rav, Rabbi Yehuda holds in Fetish it's kosher. So how can the Mishnah just say don't sleep underneath it? So according to Shmuel, ain't ben abba machlek less than 4. Avol yesh ben abba that's 4. Everyone agrees. That's why you shouldn't sleep underneath it because according to everybody, the sukkah is kosher al dreif and akumah, but you cannot sleep because the board itself is possible. More than 4. Avol ain't ben abba there's no 4. When it's kosher, you Rav said fakir less than 4. Whereas is what it calls is kosher. But 4 tvachim is a whole machlek. That means according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're permitted to sleep under the board. Is Rabbi Yehuda violation of the Mishnah seems to be going unanimous according to everybody. Yet according to Yehuda, why should it sleep there?
When they talk about sleeping, do they also mean eating?
Yes, but the difference is good question. Why do we talk about sleeping? Because by eating, the din is you're allowed to have a snack. So therefore, even if the schach is possible, some things you're allowed to eat, some things you're not allowed to eat, and we don't want to go into such such details. Sleeping, we're going to learn later in the Gemara that even a cat nap is forbidden because sleep, even a 5-minute sleep, can do wonders for you. So therefore, sleeping, you're not allowed to sleep even ara, even temporary. So the Gemara therefore uses as an example. This is when the Mishnah says, "Don't sleep underneath at all." We don't have to go into any details. Just don't sleep. Finished. Nap, the permanent, full sleep doesn't matter. Says the Gemara, the way that I will learn the Mishnah is not the way you understood. You understood we're talking about a single lone board, and therefore you have a problem. That's not what the Mishnah is talking about. So one answer is, okay, so Gemara will give one answer right now, we'll see later. Gemara says, Me Sabra, who told you that the Mishnah is going to quote to everybody? Say for us, why can't we just say at the end of the Mishnah according to that goes back to Rameir, to the one who says that a 4 tvachim board is possible, make sure you don't sleep underneath it. Sukah is kosher because don't sleep underneath it. Okay, says the Gemara Toshma coming here. Shnei sadinin mitzdarvim. So you have 2 sheets, and they combine. Let's say you have a sheet is a puzzle because it's a completed object, so it's makabel tumah. And what happens is you have 2 of them, and the 2, each one is less than a certain size, but they're next to each other, they're alongside each other, they combine, and now you have a large enough size of area of psul. So Toshma, Shnei Sadinin Mitzdarfid, if you have 2 sheets, they combine. Shnei Nesadim, if you have 2 boards, Ein Mitzdarfid, they don't combine to passel the sukkah. Sounds like, because even if you fill the entire sukkah with boards, it's still kosher, which sounds like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, Af Nesadim Kisadin. Meir says boards are no different than sheets. That boards are also usher. So if it's less than the required amount, you put 2 alongside each other, they combine. So here, the machlekes are made of Yehuda. Mishnah is now discussed in the Brisa, a slightly different scenario, but the principle is the same. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can fill the entire roof, the entire schach, with boards. So therefore, there's no issue of boards being alongside each other. It's only when it comes to sheets, because they're possible, mekabel tumah. And according to Meir, that he says that boards are no different than sheets. And the Meir holds that it's possible. Now, according to Shmuel, he says that greater than 4 tvachim, everyone agrees that it's possible. And the whole machlekes is if it's less than 4 tvachim, these boards, whether you can use them or not, between 3 and 4. The Shmuel, the whole machlekes if it's less than 4, because what's going to bother us here is they combine. What do you mean they combine? If according to Rav, the whole machlekes is greater than 4 tvachim, 4 tvachim already is possible. It doesn't need to combine to anything. So the question will be, why does the Braisa talk about two boards combining together? If they're talking about, according to Rav, the only time Rav Meir prohibits using this board is if it's greater than 4 tvachim. Greater than 4 tvachim, even on its own, it's already possible. What do I need to combine it with what and why? But according to Shmuel, it makes sense. They're talking about a board that's 3 tvachim wide. 3 tvachim, even though the board is possible, it does not passel a sukkah. Empty space passes a sukkah if it's greater than 3 tvachim. But a passel schach needs 4 tvachim to passel a sukkah. So therefore, the Braisa talks about combining two boards, 3 tvachim each. They combine and pass the sukkah. Says about bish, like Shmuel dama bish ain't ben but there's no 4. Avil yesh ben habodi hakel holds passel. My mistarfim. What do you mean combine? Mistarfim labod. Combine to 4. Elo Rav, according to Rav, the Amar, he says, B'shiyed b'machlekes, the machlekes is only when it's greater than 4 tvachim. Aval ain't been above that. If each board is less than 4 tvachim, divrei hakol shade, everyone holds his kosher because it's not the normal boards used for a home. Is heichidami? What are we talking about? If the board has 4 tvachim, which Rav Meir holds as a possible board, lamalu serufi. What do you need to combine it for? That in itself renders the sukkah possible. What do you need to combine for it all? Either less and if you're talking about the boards less than 4 tvachim, so there's kasha. So who cares if they're alongside each other? You have a bunch of kasha schach next to each other. So what do you mean they combine to pasel sukkah? You're talking about when do they combine when it's pasel schach? We don't have a shear. But if it's less than 4 tvachim, Rav holds, everyone agrees it's kasha schach. Amai, well, kani ba'alman, all it is sticks. So what's the problem? Says the Gemara, according to Rav, this is how we learn. They're talking about 4 tvachim boards. And therefore, according to Meir, the boards are possible. So what do we combine? We're talking about on the side of a sukkah. And the side of a sukkah, if even though you have a board that's possible, we say doif and akuma, the wall joins and becomes part of the schach. But if it's greater than 4 amos, it's a problem. And that's what we mean they combine. You have a number of boards, 4 tvachim. Together they combine to greater than 4 amos to make it a possible sukkah. They combine to the 4 amos from the side to make it greater than no doif and akuma. That's one way of learning the Gemara. There's another way of learning the Gemara. The Gemara says all the way around. It makes sense according to Shmuel. The Amaru says, "It's talking about the boards." In other words, the same argument in Rabbi Shmuel, but the way we ask the question. According to Shmuel, it says that the argument is between 3 and 4. If there's 4, everyone holds posel. What do you mean they combine? What do you mean? We're not talking about a 3 tvachim board here. We're talking about here a 4 tvachim board. And what do you mean they combine? So they combine to the 4 amos minatzad. El Rav, according to Rav, according to Rav Meir, at least, my mistarfin. In other words, according to Shmuel, both of them, Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir, when talking about mistarfin, they can both be talking about mistarfin. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, where does mistarfin come in? When what do you call it? If it's greater than 4, and you have to minatzad, because Rabbi Yehuda also agrees if it's greater than 4 tvachim, it becomes what do you call it? If greater than 4 tvachim, it's a possible board. They're only arguing between 3 and 4. So the Mishnah says, the Braisa says, Shmuel says, if it's between 3 and 4, they don't combine. Had it been 4, they would combine. Where? On the side. So everyone talks about combining because sometimes they do combine when it's greater than 4. But over here, we're talking about less than 4. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says it doesn't, and Rabbi Meir says I hold it's still possible, and it combines. The problem is, according to Rav, Shmuel never has a problem with boards. So there's never a possibility of ever combining. Why in the world would Shmuel use the words "ein mistarfin" if they don't combine? And when do they combine? And when the 4 tvachim they do, they're also kosher the boards. So if you look at that, so according to Meir, I understand when he said they do combine, they don't combine. He holds a 4 tvachim board. It's possible, so they combine to the 4 tvachim. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even the 4 tvachim is kosher. My ein mistarfin. What Rabbi Yehuda mean when he says that 2 boards don't combine? Kani ba'almaninu, just boards. What is combining? Where does combining come in? Says the Gemara. It's just the language because the Meir uses the expression combining. They don't combine, but really there's never combining, and it's just boards. It's not an issue ever. But he's addressing the Meir, so he uses the same vernacular the Meir uses. Says the Gemara. Now we have a Braisa supporting Rav. that says that the whole argument is only greater than 4 tvachim, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's always permitted. And there's a brayso supporting Shmuel that over greater than 4, everyone agrees it's possible. The argument is 3 and 4. Tani goes to Rabbi Yehuda, like Rav Sukah ben Nesarim shel Erez. What happened? You made schach. You covered your sukkah with boards made out of cedar tree. She'ain ben abod, the less than 4 tvachim. Less than 4 tvachim, everyone knows it's kosher because a house you don't use such narrow boards. Yesh behen abba, but if it's greater than 4 tvachim, Rameir says pasul, and Rabbi Yehuda says kosher. This is exactly the way Rab learned in our Mishnah. Then the Brayso continues. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, "I will prove to you."
Is there any significance in using the describing the wood as erez?
He's telling you what I just said. It's 30. That's all. It doesn't have to be. It makes no difference. The karka is the criteria. You're just telling him it is. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda said, "I'll prove to you. I will prove to you that boards greater than 4 tvachim are still kosher." And how? Mine said there was a story once b'shas sakana. There was some kind of a gzeira from the goyim decree. You're not allowed to do any mitzvahs in public. We're not doing any mitzvahs. And a sukkah is a mitzvah in public, so it's very difficult to avoid scrutiny from the goyim and chas v'shalom and get punished for it. So during the time of Sakana, sheheviyanu and Sodim, we brought in boards shehoye ben abo that were 4 tvachim wide. And we covered our porch. The yeshav lutachtein, and we sat underneath it. So you're saying that if you're telling me that greater than 4 is possible, what's the point of putting schach? We're not saying the kosher sukkah anyway. So that's haraya. The greater than 4 is definitely kosher. They said back to Rabbi Yehuda, that's a raya. Misham raya, ain shas hasakana raya. In other words, if Mahat Torah would be possible, then of course it makes no difference shas sakana not sakana. But since Mahat Torah is kosher, the Rabbanan were worried about boards greater than 4 says Rameir because next time you sit under a house because you can't distinguish the difference. But if a shas sakana, Chachamim pulled away their issa. And Rabbi Yehuda says if the Chachamim made that issa, then the issa replies in all instances, even when it's difficult, even when it's a shas sakana, we don't want. If we decide that it's possible, it is possible. The Mogen Avraham says in Shulchan Aruch that if b'shas hatchak, use the word shas hatchak, b'shas hatchak, you can rely on some of these psulim. You can sit in the sukkah, the boards are greater than 4, and all that kind of stuff. And his makar would be right here. Ein shas sakana raya. Shas sakana is not a raya. Actually, we have another Gemara similar by Lulav. We'll see later as well in the Lamed. That in time of sakana we suspend our isurim derabban. Saying about further, Tanya. Now we have another brayso covers Shmuel to support Shmuel. Sukah ben Nesarim shel Erez. If you made schach with boards again, here you have your cedar tree again. I guess that was the most common boards that they used to cover their houses, and that's the chiddush. That even though it has a permanent nature, you use it for your house. Still in the sukkah it's kosher, provided it's the right width. Sheyesh behen abba. If it's 4 tvachim wide, divrei hakapsul. Everyone knows pasul. Ein behen abba. There's no 4 tvachim wide. A meir pasul, Rabbi Yehuda machshir. So clearly, this is like Shmuel. Above 4, a greater than 4, everybody agrees it's pasul. Between 3 and 4 is a machlekes. Umoider a meir. A meir is moider. A meir who said that it's possible between 3 and 4. He's moider she'im yesh bein nesel and nesel between each board. Let's say between each board there's kimoli nesel shemini pesel. This is where you had a board. You had open space. You filled it with kosher schach. Kosher schach is called pesel because we say that you have to use the leftovers of the gaiden of your threshing floor and yekev of your grapes, of your wine. So therefore, we use the word in the Gemara pesel. Pesel means like the psoilus, the wastes, the residual. So if you had a board, empty space, you filled it with kosher schach, board, empty space. And then what happens is in the middle of your sukkah, that you have 2 empty spaces and you fill it with kosher schach. So now you have an area in your sukkah which is kosher, 8 tvachim of kosher schach. So Rameir is moider that even though you have boards on both sides that are 4 tvachim wide or whatever, or greater than 3 tvachim. So you have 8 tvachim of kosher schach right in the middle, so you have a kosher sukkah. And the boards that are on the side don't pass the sukkah because we'll use the rule of doifen hakuma until it gets, you move all the walls towards the middle with the center is in schach and it's kosher. So moide Rameir, shim yesh bein nesel lesek imel nesel shemenich he put pesel b'neim kshed is kosher. Moide Rabbi Yehuda, even though you have full of boards, it's still kosher in this case because doifen hakuma. And Rabbi Yehuda, who said that it's kosher, is moide. what do you call it? She'im nosan olen nesa shirochav about vachim. Even though Rabbi Yehuda is very lenient, that he says if it's less than 4 tvachim, the boards, are kosher, you can make schach out of it. But he agrees if you only have one board, but it's 4 tvachim wide, it is kosher because of Deifan Akume, but even though it's only one board, since it's greater than 4 tvachim, I am made it to Rameh, greater than 4 tvachim, you cannot sleep underneath it. You cannot sleep underneath it. If you sleep underneath it, you're not Yaitzer. Don't think it's only Xavier Rabbanon, but actually you're not Yaitzer at all, because Deifan Akume changes that schach into a wall. Itma, we learned. What about Hovchan al Tzidei? And you have a board that's 4 tvachim wide, let's say 2 tvachim high. So you put the board sideways. So now you make it vertical. So it's only occupying 2 tvachim of the schach, but the board essentially is a 4 tvachim board. So is it also because it's 4 tvachim board, or do we view how much space it occupies in the schach of the sukkah and only took up 2 tvachim, therefore it's kosher? So Hovchan al Tzidei, you took a board and you changed it to the side. So Hunam Absul is possible. Hunam Mekshel is kosher. Ikle Rav Nachman l'Suda. Rav Nachman once came to Suda. Ulegabei Rav Chizda Rav Huna aside. They can ask him what he thinks. Amdilei, they said to him, what do you say if you turn it to the side? What's it in? Amul Psul is possible. Why? Nasu kishpudin shel matkas. We treat it like these metal spits, and therefore it is usher and so on. Didn't I tell you Amri Kavas? He didn't trust me. I told you Rav Nachman agrees with me. So why in the world did you have to go and ask him, what he holds? So he said, what Rav Nachman was saying is that just like a piece of metal, I don't care which direction you put it, it's possible. So to a board, once it's 4 tvachim wide, I don't care which angle you put it on, is be'etzem puzzle. So Rav Huna is baladik. Why do you ask him what he says? I told you what he says. Didn't I tell you Amri Kavasa he agrees with me? They said to him, but me you told us the reason why he agrees with you, then we wouldn't have gone to him. You think it was a hesba. You just said a din halacha, this is it. Did you ask me? I would have to volunteer. If you wanted to know the reason, you should have asked. I wouldn't have told you. The Rogachover has an interesting Akira, and Chassidus and Tanya talks about it. We know that when something is asa mahatera, as the Brisker Lashon is, it's an isa chefza. The object itself is asa treif, the animal itself is treif. What about an isa the Rabbanon? One came along and said that this, we don't want you to eat this, it's asa. Or we don't want you to do this, it's asa. The Rabbanon have the capacity to take something that is be'etzem mutter and transform it and make the thing itself asa, or is an isa gabra? We are not allowed to use it, but the thing itself is still kosher. And that's the question. Now that the Chamik levied is Issa on these boards, the question is the board itself became disqualified as chach. So I don't care which angle you put it on, it's no good. Or the board itself is kosher, that the Chacham said you should not sit in such a sukkah. That was the question. That's the argument here. How far Eastern Rabbanon go? And Nachman said, "It's kishpudim shel matchas." What was he saying? The Issa, the object itself, becomes Aser. That the Rabbanon have the koyach to make it Issa chefza, which is what Tanya says that the source of the origin of the chayis from Yisur Rabban also come from Gimel Klipzat Meis. In other words, it's not mutter that you shouldn't use it. The thing itself becomes aser. The Nesivis, the Simirei Hey, learns that if someone does an Yisur Rabban b'shegig, you don't need to do tshuva, because he said that if you ate treif by mistake, the fact is that you ate something which is aser, became part of you, so therefore you have to do tshuva. He says an Isur Rabbanon is only an Isur Gabra, it's an Isur on you. The thing itself is permitted, but you didn't realize you're doing an Avera. So therefore, what do you have to do tshuva for? By Issa the Torah, you have to do tshuva because the thing itself was no good. Who cares if it's your fault or not your fault? Something happened, something bad happened. Over here, the thing itself is good. So nothing bad happened as far as the item is that you just consumed, whatever you used. It's the fact that you didn't listen to the Chachamim. That's the Issa. But you didn't know that the Chachamim laid down an Issa, and therefore he says you don't need. So the according to the Sivis, but if the Grogachover learns that this is, and the halacha here is, by the way, you're not allowed to use this board no matter what angle it is, which means that Chassidus is the Dan Notzach. Okay, continue. Says the Gemara further, Lema Mesayele, I'll bring a proof. It says Asukah, what is Asukah? Ein Machzeke, is it Asukah does not hold, Kedei Roishe, Beruba, V'Shachon, Asukah is not large enough to carry most of your body and your table. If above pits, if the walls have a breach, kadeshi is that is the walls are lifted above the ground more than 3 tefachim. We'll see the more later. So a goat could come right underneath it. So what kind of wall is it? The whole purpose of the wall is to keep the alien things out of the sukkah, but it keeps nothing out. Okay, everything can come in. If you put a board on the churach of Abba Tvachim that is 4 Tvachim wide, even though the board entered the sukkah only 3 Tvachim, psulit is possible. That's what the Brayza says. You have a 4 Tvachim board, it only entered 3 Tvachim in the sukkah, it is possible. So what do you mean only 3 Tvachim? This seems to be the board is 4 Tvachim wide, 3 Tvachim high. So therefore, it's only occupied in the area of the schach of 3 Tvachim. But even though the board itself is 4 Tvachim, and it says it's possible, it's a pure raya to Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. That's what the more thinks. Hey, chidomi lav isn't it? Because how can I be placed on the side? Is that raya to Rav Huna? Saying about here you cannot bring a raya. Line up. You know what we're talking about here. You have a sukkah, you place it at the entrance of your sukkah, you only have 3 walls. Remember, Rashi says that most sukkahs in those days made only 3 walls. Today we make 4, it's a hiddur, and everyone makes 4, but in those days they used to make 3. So they used to place, if they placed on the end of the entrance to the sukkah, the 4th side, which had no wall, you placed a board that is 4 tefachim wide, but only 3 tefachim of it is surrounded by walls, the 4th tefach is sticking out. So l'chayda, we said before that a 4 tefachim plank asks the sukkah. According to Yehuda, everyone agree. According to Shmuel, everyone agrees that a 4 tefachim board passes the sukkah, and this is a raya that the halach is like Shmuel in this case, according to many Rishonim. So see what a 4 tefachim thing passes the sukkah, but the problem here is only 3 tefachim is inside the sukkah. So what's the problem? The ayo tiltzel the gava apichad lebar 3 tefachim inside the sukkah, one is outside. We learned before the concept that if the schach continues outwards, that area under the schach, even though it's not surrounded by walls, is considered part of the sukkah. It's called a pesel hayotzim in a sukkah, the schach that extends from the sukkah, and so therefore we use it to be lenient. You can eat it, but also will be strict. If it's a 4 tefachim board and 1 tefach is outside the sukkah, it's as if all 4 tefachim is inside the sukkah, and it disqualifies the sukkah. Nidin kesukkah, it ruins the sukkah. Big machlek is showing what kind of sukkah we're talking about. Rashi is not so clear, but many Rishonim we're talking about only a small sukkah. So therefore, you took away from your 7 tefachim. If you're talking about a large sukkah, so the entrance of the sukkah is possible, but the rest of the sukkah is still kosher. What do you mean that the sukkah is psula? What do you mean the Mishnah, the Braita says psula? Sounds like that not just the board is possible. Sounds like the whole sukkah is possible, but if it's a large sukkah, okay, you have a section that's no good, but you can eat in the rest of the sukkah. What's the big deal? Let's continue a little bit further. Next Mishnah continues from this Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, actually,